There is a lot of paranoia going on with this whole online ID verification stuff that's being passed in various places around the world, like the UK and all in the Philippines and all this other stuff. And I, like you, have some very strong natural emotional responses to that because I don't want anybody having my information unless they absolutely need it. And, you know, being forced to go through some kind of facial recognition thing to verify that I'm an adult, or having to provide my driver's license or something like that to someone like Discord, just really does rub me the wrong way, just like it does for you. So obviously the natural reaction is going to be to want to push back against these things, and it's a pretty reasonable response. However, like most of the things I talk about on this channel, I don't like to just talk about one specific thing without going over the nuance and the other aspects of things. So the biggest argument that people are inevitably going to, because the whole purpose of all of this is supposed to be we're trying to protect the children, right? We're trying to prevent children, underage people from accessing content that we don't want them accessing because it's not appropriate for them, it's damaging to their mental health, blah, 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 that other stuff. And absolutely, that's completely reasonable. However, the problem that we're going to have with that is that the only argument that you can really come up with to fight against the idea that we should be putting systems in place that verify that the people are old enough to consume this content is that it's on the parents to make sure that their kids aren't accessing these things. And it's like, yeah, in a perfect world, your argument makes sense. But unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. And there's several reasons why that attitude doesn't really work. First and foremost, it's the typical lazy attitude that says, it's not my problem, it's someone else's problem, so they just need to figure it out. That's lazy. You're being completely unreasonable. There's lots of parents out there who just don't give a crap and they're going to let their children do whatever they want. It also ignores the many millions of people out there who are so busy trying to work their asses off to provide a life for their children that they don't have time to constantly be over there supervising their kids and making sure they're not accessing things they're not supposed to access. And then, so the other side of that is it's also all the rest of us saying, well, screw those people, we don't care, because we're not doing anything to make it easier for parents to take care of their kids and have access to opportunities that allow them to work reasonable jobs to be able to support their kids. Oh, you don't have a skill set, should have went to college. You don't have a skill set, should have did this, should have did that. It's on you, you should have figured it out. Like, that's the attitude that we have. And then we still want to turn around and say, well, you need to be watching your kids to make sure they don't do their stuff. And if they're on these websites, that's your fault. Well, we're creating this situation that makes it hard for them to be able to watch their kids, right? Like, it's not like the mom can stay home and watch their kids all day like they used to. Both parents have to go to work. How does that work? My issue here is that while I agree that there is a lot of potential for government control that spreads out from these age verification things, and while my natural tendency is that these are not things that are good and we don't want to be doing these things, at the same time, there is something to be said for the idea that we as a community, as a city community, a state community, a national community, a global community, have a responsibility to the children. And while I don't know that age verification systems as they are being presented right now are necessarily the correct way to go, I think that having some kind of a system in place that that is effective at preventing young people from accessing inappropriate content or getting access to things that could be potentially dangerous to them, I think that is something we should be pursuing, but we have to be careful, because I do believe in the idea of the slippery slope. And if we're not hyper vigilant about what these people, these lawmakers, these things are putting in place to do this, then it can quickly spiral out of control into something we never intended. If your response to trying to protect children from these things is, it's on the parents, I don't want any restrictions on me because that's a terrible argument. It's a terrible way of looking at things, because it's going to require the community as a whole to get together to protect the children. It just is. I hate that. I hate it as much as everybody else does, but you also have to accept reality. Lots of parents suck. Lots of parents are just too busy trying to get the basic food on the table stuff done to watch their children every minute of the day. They can't necessarily be there to make sure their kids are doing things the right way. Sometimes that's the way it is. A lot of times that's the way it is, which means that we as a community need to step in and help to make sure that our kids are not exposed to these things they're not supposed to get exposed to. And how do we do that? Well, it requires making some sacrifices. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. So that's what I wanted to say. I'm not saying that the specific laws that are being passed right now are necessarily the way we need to go. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know that a flat rejection of any system at all to make it so that we can limit our children's exposure to things that, you know, we as adults aren't even really mentally and evolutionarily equipped to deal with. It's way worse for kids who are still forming their brains. They don't need to be exposed to those things. And there needs to be something done about that doesn't just rely on individual parents, each and every one of them doing the things the right way. Like, it's not fair to the children that they got the bad lottery of getting a crappy parent. Like, it's not their fault that happened. So we need to step in and fix it. We need to step in and fix it as a community. And online age verification tools can be one way to do that if it's not abused by the government, which it always is, but that requires us to pay attention. Sorry, it is what it is. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers, and I'll see you for the next one.